This is the last session in our 2023 Virtual Energy Summit, and possibly one of the most valuable. In it, we review each of the other sessions in the context of the primary drivers in the energy industry today: cost optimization and sustainable operations. Here's our discussion as we walk through the assessments one session at a time. Joel and I started this morning with a discussion around how the biggest priorities in the oil and gas industry right now seem to be around cost optimization and energy transition or sustainable operations. And I think it's not that hard actually to connect the dots from each of the sessions that we had today to those two priorities. And so I'd like to actually have a bit of a conversation around that. And maybe what we'll do is hop right to this diagram that I shared with you earlier today, and just talk through kind of each session. And Joel and Bruce, I know you guys have been kind of my biggest partners here in leading the discussion. So maybe I'll get each of you to start with an opinion. And then if any of the people from the attendee base, I don't know, did you get them unmuted, Beth, or?
Actually, apparently they can unmute themselves, but we can test that.
Okay, perfect. So
because I can request that they unmute, but they have to
Okay.
unmute themselves.
So if you want to share your opinion, definitely unmute yourself, and or you can just drop something in the chat and we'll talk about it. But let's start with the top one. If we talk about site security and the whole unmanned life discussion of surveillance, site surveillance, and inspections, where do you place that in terms of priorities, Joel and Bruce, when it comes to cost optimization? How does it apply to cost optimization? And maybe let's have a discussion about how it applies to energy transition. Who wants to start?
I'm happy to start out with cost optimization. Once again, the site security and inspection gives you that perishable data. If you can cut something off before a catastrophic event goes on, it's definitely a cost optimization. It also fits into sustainability of not having a environmental impact if you can once again cut off a catastrophic event.
So it's all about the prevention kind of thing, and using it to get ahead of issues. Is that kind of what you're thinking, Bruce?
That was my thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. What other thoughts have you got, Joel?
The first thing, and I promise I'm not going to mention hydrogen. I might say methane, but the thing that really got my attention was the ability to use these drones with infrared cameras and sensors that we can actually monitor what's going on, and not necessarily to, have the government do inspections, but actually companies do their own and maintain their own inspections and level of that. And we talk about sustainability. I mean, there's something that I feel like we're missing from the sustainability conversation. That's sustaining our workforce. It's sustaining probably one of the most important assets that we have. There is this, resignation where people are beginning to leave, and it's hard to retain people. And I saw a poll recently where it said that the cost of having to retrain people to come in and replace is 1.5 to 2 times the salary of the person that we lost. And so if we
how do you think the unmanned life approach, that platform helps us with that? Sorry,
I think thanks for keeping me.
No, that's all good.
So I think from a safety and security standpoint, from what Bruce talked about as far as recognizing dangerous events, and how we can be more proactive in those situations before they get catastrophic.
Perfect. Yeah, and you're not actually sending people in there to assess. You're actually able to do that with drones or robots.
Autonomously too. That was the coolest part, was to see that part about it, and to where it can be intelligent and recognize different things. It's not gonna be perfect. I've got an experience already where AI has lied to me or been incorrect, but yeah, it's a start.
Yeah, and I think we've talked a lot in various settings about making operations more autonomous. This is truly a way to do that in a very tangible way, I think. So I think both on the cost optimization side to get ahead of things, also from the sustainability side to avoid sustainability incidents for sure, and then also protecting the staff component or the worker transition component.
Yeah.
Good. I don't think Kevin's with us anymore, but let's talk a little bit. Oh, actually, was there anything from the audience in the chat? I didn't see anything in the chat. Anybody want to unmute and give us a comment on the unmanned life piece?
I don't see that they're able to unmute. I still show a lot.
Okay. Yeah, I think it might be locked. Anyways, if you want to make a comment, definitely put it into the chat, and we'll get you unmuted somehow or other. Let's go on to the second one. Kevin Holcomb's presentation around sensors, a LoRaWAN kind of a roll your own version, as well as a Cisco version that now allows you to integrate 4 to 20 milliamp sensors and vibration monitors and a bunch of other things. What are your thoughts around cost optimization? How does it play into that? And then how does it play into the environmental side? Maybe Joel, if you want to start this one.
I'm super thrilled that we're allowing third-party sensors. I think that new bridge that we have, that opens up to where we don't have to have proprietary all-in-one systems, that we can actually pick and choose where we need to have that. I think that's going to open up from a cost optimization standpoint. It's going to create some good competition across the board as well. Obviously, from a sustainability operations, from a sensor quality, air quality, leak detection, operational controls. I think that's pretty obvious. That's kind of why it was developed. I was really curious about learning about the new vibration sensor as far as how it works, because I'm wondering, is this 5-second sample every hour going to give me, is it empirical enough data on something like that? So I'm completely ignorant when it comes to that world. So
I'm curious too. I don't know.
Yeah.
That was one of the curiosities too. It certainly does give you some anomaly detection, but whether it's reactive enough to effectively do predictive maintenance is a good question.
Well, it was
Bruce,
more of a
any thoughts?
canary kind of in the well.
Yeah,
versus
exactly.
Bring the high dollar stuff on site.
Yeah, exactly.
So I can buy that.
And maybe onto rotating assets that maybe are not quite critical enough to warrant a big installation, right? Bruce, what are your thoughts on the sensor piece that Kevin talked about?
Yeah, I think, definitely on the sustainability, the ability to digitize your stuff. Like I said, some of the low-hanging fruit out there, they just started to scratch the surface on data that they're bringing back from the pump jacks, right? Like, I meet with customers and they're like, yeah, we've got, we've got this value and this value, but there's like 500 other values that we can start to use, and they're not doing anything with them yet.
Right.
And so as they start to get more of that, they start to make, obviously better overall equipment efficiency, and then the sustainability of that asset.
Yeah, very good. So when you get that into more of an analytics system, a data system with the analytics and visualization component that Matt talked about, how does that incrementally improve or change the impact of cost optimization and sustainability? Who wants to start with that one?
Well, I love the example that Matt had, because I was actually the principal architect at Freeport when that was being implemented from the start.
Oh, cool.
So, I think that one of the things there that came out of it, and Matt talked about it, is the road conditions, right? So they pulled the VIMs, the vehicle information, off of the heavy duty haul equipment, which already has all of the strut pressure. It has all this other stuff on it. It already has all of this. And then they were smart enough to start to correlate that if the strut pressure changes in a drastic fashion, there must be a pothole that we just ran over. And so then they just correlate the GPS, which is already on the haul truck, the strut pressure, which is already on the haul truck, and then where the road condition is at, so they know where to deploy a blade to go out and repair the road. When you look at, six tires on a Caterpillar 793 haul truck, each costing $70,000 a tire. If you can then extend the
Reduce
life
the
of that
wear.
tire by
Yeah.
getting good road conditions. It's a huge cost savings.
Yeah. There's all kinds of data points that are kind of hiding, right? That could give insights
yes.
for sure. And I think that's the case across all industry verticals for sure. Joel, thoughts?
I read a book recently, and it talked about dataism is going to be the next religion that is people will be drawn to as far as being able to capture information. Recently we watched the Starship rocket launch, and I remember seeing a news article that said Starship rocket explodes after launch. I'm like, oh, that's horrific. I was so excited to look at it, but then after reading and understanding that getting past the launch tower was the goal, and everything beyond that was gravy. In fact, everything beyond that was telemetry, and they're going to continue.
Yeah.
And that's SpaceX is a company that capitalizes on telemetry and data more than any other company I've seen before. And I think you're going to see the value in that, and whether that's data points of what Matt talked about, or just everything environmental, so that we can continue to learn from the mistakes fundamentally. And I mean, that's what's going to drive AI into this as well. So
Absolutely.
that was good stuff.
And
That's a
by the
great point
way,
too, Joel. I like
the,
Yeah, go Robert.
the methane
Robert.
in that ship was actually, they're planning to actually pump it from underneath their production site there. So there's actually
wow.
a methane well there that they're planning to actually use. So
Interesting.
fairly closed loop
Okay.
right there.
Wait a minute, is that a good idea though?
to build a rocket launcher on top of a methane reservoir?
There's actually a pipeline. I shouldn't even tell you. It's even closer. But let's just say at their production site, which is like less than a mile away, they're drilling a well to produce their own methane drive.
Okay.
rocket. So
Interesting. Let's keep moving here. Augmenteer. Augmenteer generated a lot of conversation, and we had a really good discussion at the end of the Augmenteer thing. How does it relate directly to cost optimization and sustainability? I know, Joel, you already mentioned the workforce transition piece under sustainability. In addition to that, any other kind of sustainability or maybe cost optimization components?
It's interesting where we're going to
Yeah.
go from here, because I remember having a conversation with my grandfather years ago, and he was telling me about an act in 1938 where the workday went from 6 days to 5 days, or 40-hour work week, and it was mandatory by law. And the idea that we have 4 generations in the workforce right now, and trying to understand, I'm already seeing customers that are moving to a 4-day work week, or at least 5, then 4, 5, and then an ABC schedule. And so again, I'll reiterate the importance of probably the most important resource we have is, well, at least today it is, until our AI overlords take over. But to have that focus, to have a workforce, we know that it creates a purpose. But it's interesting to see how that comes together and brings in that safety piece of it, as well as that purpose, and where people will continue to thrive. And I love the idea of seeing, okay, this is what it takes for me to get promoted. I know where to go, and I'm gonna stand up for that
Very
when
tangible.
I get those
Yeah.
points. Yeah, I like that a lot.
Bruce, what are your thoughts?
No, I like that too. And I really like the ability to track that, to help motivate what boxes do I have to check off? Because a lot of times it's very obscure, right? How do I get from position A to position B? And it's like, well, you do some stuff.
Yeah.
If you have an ability to quantify that into a person's, you can really focus them, and I think that's a great thing.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, it looks like there's Joel. He's back.
Somebody
Let's
knocked
talk
on the
about Bob's presentation around WAN. WAN management in particular changes kind of the dynamics of cost around how well the WAN can get used, how much it costs to deploy new WAN technology, a lot of the standardization components that you guys mentioned from a cost and security perspective. What are your thoughts in terms of the WAN and how it relates to cost optimization and sustainability?
It's interesting because I have a customer that is really interested in the concept of NFVIS or NFV, network function virtualization. And Cisco was pretty invested in this 5 years ago, and we thought that this was going to be the next big thing because we're going to have compute everywhere. Turns out we still like and need ASICs. We still hit a point, and that's not going to the point. Now we are seeing some virtualization, not necessarily from an NFV standpoint, but the ability to put compute type applications like Cheetah Networks or a cyber vision sensor into those pieces. But I think it dawned on me, Meraki was probably one of the biggest aha moments I saw. And I just thought that it was a stupid simple way to do networking, but it really says something as far as the consistency from a config software strategy and a controller base. I mean, we did the same thing in wireless 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And so why wouldn't it be any different there when we go to the WAN like that and be able to put our arms, and we're looking at things like SDA as well as from a fabric standpoint, both in the data center and the campus.
It's really happening in every network domain, right? Yeah.
And I'm surprised it hasn't happened faster, quite honestly.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So that's from a cost optimization perspective, primarily, I guess. Bruce, what are your thoughts?
No, I think that fits right into it, and having the diverse paths, we've seen many customers across everything from oil and gas to healthcare, bring in a very inexpensive internet connection and keep their MPLS connection, and either offload guest traffic, unimportant traffic, whatever word we want to use for it, onto the inexpensive carrier. But then what SD-WAN has done for us is to give the ability to actually monitor that. And we're finding that, a lot of the inexpensive internet connectivity is pretty dang reliable.
Yeah.
And so that's data points that people didn't have before, they just went off of, okay, I know I have an SLA with an MPLS carrier, and I know that I don't when I buy an internet connection. Now, I'm not saying that means, you can just throw everything out and go with internet, but by monitoring it, you can start to have more of a comfort level and reliability on it as one of your connections.
Yeah, no, Bruce, to add into that, I mean, there's another customer that was a large retail that I was on several awkward conversations with their global service provider where they had actually already done the data and their internet-based connection. This was when we were doing DMVPN connections. And those internet-based connections actually were more reliable, were faster.
Wow.
And that notion is what kind of gave birth to a lot of what we've seen in SD-WAN. And to Bruce's point earlier, not only can we choose the best path, but we can choose the best application for the best path. And then if we're throttled too bad, we can say, you know what, these two applications, they get it all in case we go catastrophic mode. And
that's awesome.
You're not even seeing what we can do with 5G yet, and then things like Starlink change the game completely.
I was really intrigued by that, even with the unmanned life example where they were using Starlink in the middle of nowhere, which to backhaul data right off of a drone, right? I hadn't really seen that one coming. Let's talk a little bit about what Louis had to bring. He brought two different ideas to the table, and maybe let's talk a little bit about how those two concepts help to increase cost optimization and sustainability in the WAN scenario that we just talked about, right? How does that take it one step further? Any thoughts to start us off?
First, you want to go? I'm kind of sucking all the oxygen here.
I think the simplicity, the panel and bringing the data into an easier digestible area is really where Cheetah, brings in a lot of power, a lot of advantage. And then, with hardened equipment and being able to, if you're able to look at, like the ESR or something like that into a hardened equipment, now you have end-to-end Cisco, so you could have, the same security policy across end-to-end, which is huge for customers. You can also then have, the one hand to shake or one throat to choke, depending on what situation you happen to be in.
How
at
the
that
day is
time,
going,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts there, Joel? And
It just exacerbates the flexibility. The fact that we can now put containers and edge compute applications, and we can do whatever we want with them. And I think it's I really liked the vision that Cheetah has, and selfishly, I hope Cisco learns from it and begins to evolve the products as well. And I think that type of innovation is gonna help the
Drive
experience
that, yeah.
altogether. Yeah.
well, that's the way Cisco's, added a lot of capability over the years, right? Is by learning from the small companies that are doing stuff, right?
Right.
So I think this is all good. Let's wrap it with a conversation about Robert's journey through people, process, and technology. We don't often think about security as being a contributor to cost optimization or to sustainable operations, but really it's inextricable from kind of the rest of the operation. Is there a direct line that we can draw between how the security of an environment operates and cost and sustainability? Like, how do you link them? Is there a tighter link, or is it just an implicit one?
No, I think it's a direct link.
Okay.
If you look at especially what Robert talked about as you're moving assets in and out, or you're merging, you have a merger that comes in, and if you happen to be company A, and merger typically is a kind word for your company has been bought.
Yeah.
And so if you look at that and you bring it in, and you have no visibility in it, how do you integrate without bringing in Swiss cheese into hopefully your secure environment? And that's really a big thing, right? And then how do you do cost optimization if you purchased a company? How do you go in there and retrofit it so that you can make sure that I just spent $5 billion on a company, and I really can't integrate it until I make sure it's secure, that I can connect it to my system. How much money is being lost right there? I think that's a big direct correlation.
It's a direct correlation. Yeah. Any thoughts on that, Joel?
So listening to Robert talk, I was getting some PTSD and frustration from years past. Security is so obscure, but it's obscure and intentional. And even the news related articles, specifically when we go back to the whole colonial issue and customers. I mean, I remember being on weekly calls with my customer because of that incident, and then realizing and understanding that it was not an actual operational issue. And all that did was help us to focus on I mean, I guess it brought attention to it, but security is one of those fine balanced objectives that we have to know what we're talking about first and foremost, and secondly, we have to be careful of how much we do share, and because when we do share about lessons learned, that opens up new vulnerabilities, because there's still bad actors that are going to that we can't trust, that are going to take advantage of these lessons learned. Bob talked about that we still have vulnerabilities out there throughout the world on different devices. And so security is very frustrating in a sense. And when I talk to executives, they're very frustrated about it. So it's a known, okay, I know this is risk, and I know that this is what I'm liable for. And by the way, I can't do anything about it. My hand, I cannot shut down. I can't turn around and modernize this.
I think probably the only way I've been able to make sense of that, Joel, over the years is what somebody shared with me about 6 months ago, when I was chatting with an operations security expert in a customer scenario, and what he shared with me is, he said, I've had really no issues in prioritizing security requirements after we moved the whole security requirement into the risk organization.
Yeah.
And because in oil and gas, we know about risk, right? Whether it's financial risk, whether it's human risk, Like there's so many risk factors that we navigate every day in the oil and gas environment. Why is cybersecurity not part of that risk equation, right? And I think more and more we're seeing companies doing that, right? Where if they start to put their cyber risk into the same framework as their other risk analysis, all of a sudden the board knows exactly how to evaluate it from a financial perspective. And it's easier to deal with. It's not just something the IT department is complaining about, right? It's now part of the operation, and that's actually quite powerful. I don't know. You have a response to that? I know, Bruce, you were smirking a bit. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that approach.
No, I love that. I think it's just, you know, it's another shift in the view, right? The same way we talk about in the IT world, we talk about security, and in the OT world, we use the exact same tools and we talk about visibility, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same thing. It's just, you know, coming out of two different lenses. And then when you take it and you change it from, you know, the IT security to a risk inside the OT world, you know, it's the same thing we're looking at. We're just looking at it through a different lens now.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same thing. It's apparent now. It's the same risk too. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's
like
just now there's an actual framework and a metric to it, right? That makes sense for evaluation, right? But you know what? This has been awesome. I really appreciate you guys helping me out and us being able to pull this together. I really appreciate everyone who stuck around for the whole day. This has been a rich time. And I really appreciate all the presenters that shared their insights with us. That was our concluding discussion from Cisco's Virtual Energy Summit. If you missed any of the sessions, you can reference the summit playlist or start back at the beginning with this video. Take care.